Well, well, that last episode is begging for a part two. There are implications arising from it. You might not be begging for a part two, and I'm not. I don't even want to be doing it. But the episode was begging for it, for its own sake. Did I say this is all about you? I lied. It's not for you. It's not about you. It's about it. The idea. It's nothing to do with you or me. All right. These things that sit in the ether. Okay, here it comes. The idea, the implications of the previous episode are that you and I will die. With some versions of each of us never having existed for a start. And also, you and I will die when you die and when I die. What might be characterized as the real you and the real me will die alone. To some extent, to some reasonably large extent, I think, because, take me for example, Charlie. I won't be fully in touch with myself, so to speak, by the time I die. You never quite get to know yourself. And people tell me, and they could be wrong, that you don't know yourself right now. And they could be wrong. I'm not saying that. But you'll die, these people tell me, without actually having ever got to know yourself fully. There's a you that dies. And maybe that thing goes off to heaven or wherever, but you never got to know it. Which is pretty strange, really. You never got to know you, So the you that didn't get to know you, there's two of you there, isn't there? All right, the you who goes off to heaven, you didn't get to know that person. But you who didn't get to know that person quite, you might have died. Or maybe you, and that's the end of you, maybe a dementor sucked your soul out. Now there's two versions of you there. There's the you that went off to heaven, the real you. You never got to know the real you. No one ever gets to know themselves fully. But then there's the you, the other you, I've mixed them up in my head. No, I'm still on track. There's the other you that didn't get to know that you. Now, that you, does that you go to heaven as well? Maybe there's two versions of you in heaven, all right? Or maybe, that version of you, it just disappears. All right, whatever. That's a shame, really, isn't it? I'd vote for that you to go to heaven, and the other one can just disappear. Yeah, let's have that. All right, it really doesn't matter. The point is, someone dies. Now, I'm glad this episode exists for its own sake, because it just disappeared up its own sake. But something dies. Something has to die. There's who you are and who you think you are, which is a slightly different thing. And one of them has to die, I think. Now, there's another you altogether. Pick someone who loves you. There's a version of you that person thinks is you, and when you die, that version of you dies. I think that's fair enough. You could be an axe-wielding homicidal maniac, and you never told the person who loves you the most about that. So, the person who just died when you die, that person, that other person knows, which is a version of you that isn't an axe-wielding homicidal maniac. That person knew, that person just died. Never actually, yeah. Well, it did exist in his head or her head. All right, so that's all right. So there's 3 versions of you so far. Now, obviously, if you know 1,000 people, in the world, there's 1,000 versions of you. All right. Now, what goes to heaven? I'm going to say you do. But the real you disappears. But the you think you were, that can go to heaven. All right. Okay. All the other versions of you can die. All right, that's okay. Now, you're the person who loves you the most in all the world. Maybe you love that person too. Who do you love? Well, it's a version of that other person. And when that other person dies, well, if it's heaven, you want to be in heaven with the person you thought that other person was. So we'd better have that person in heaven too. We need a couple of you. We need a couple of versions of you in heaven. There's no 2 ways around it. Or else it's just not heaven. All right. Because, that other person who was in love with you, but not the version of you that the homicidal, that person, if that person goes to heaven, that person needs to go to heaven and be with the you that person thought you were. So we'd better put that person in heaven too. All right, so there's going to be a couple of versions of you in heaven. Now, I'm a bit worried about the real you. I think that the real you, if the real you never gets recognized in life, then the real you just disappears. I think that's fair enough, which is no great loss, because there's a whole lot of possible yous that never get actualized, if I can use that word, because there are possible versions of you, and some of those just didn't come into existence at all, because apparently there's an essence of you that is you when you were born. The stuff you were born with, whatever that thing is, the soul or whatever, that's the essence of you. If you're Kalenjin from Kenya, the essence of you is that you could win the Olympics in the 100 meters, because you are a master race, physically and all that sort of stuff. But if you're just old pasty-faced Charlie here, when I was born, the essence of me could not possibly win the 100 meters in the Olympics. So there's the essence of you, but then there's of all the possible yous, all the versions of you that could possibly be. Once the essence of you lands in the universe, there are all sorts of possible versions of you that could arise, because you make something of yourself on top of your essence. I think that's fair to say. And a lot of people sort of talk about that. And none of this is my ideas. I'm just hearing other people talk, and I'm just paraphrasing what they tend to tell me. I think it's a load of crap, the whole thing. I just like watching the footy. But, I like doing the maths on it, There's maths in what I'm saying here. I could put all this in an array and, attach a button to it and press the button and see what comes out. A version of Charlie. Throw a little bit of a crisis in there, throw, some happy times, throw some good friends and all that sort of stuff, and see what Charlie comes out, You can make it a software program. Maybe we are a software program. And, even if we are, it's not the end of the world until you die. Because let's say we're all avatars or whatever, then, and we're all kind of a video game or whatever. Well, even if some godlike character, small boy playing a video game or something, has placed into me the desire, the impulse to fall in love with another person, I'm still falling in love with that other person. even if it's programmed, it's still happening. I'm still falling in love. I can't lose. You know, look, if I don't actually exist, if I'm in someone else's imagination, Descartes said all this sort of stuff, I can't lose. It doesn't matter whether I exist or not. I think I do, and that's enough. And if I fall in love with another person who's also just a character in a video game, you know, just an automaton or something, and that person thinks she or he loves me, and I think that I love him or her, it's still sweet, sweet love, even if we are, you know, pixels. All right, so there's that. Now, when we die, some interesting things happen there, and it's a little bit beyond me, you know. But there's all the different possible versions of you, and all the different possible versions of me. You know, as we're born, there's a possible version of me that hasn't got that arm. You know, could fall off. You know, well, your arm is not you. Look, I identify with my arm. But anyway, so now, let's see, as it turns out, I've never had a crisis in my life. I've never had a personal crisis. So there's a version of me that never came into existence. I may have one still coming up, you know. But so far, I've never had a personal crisis happen to me. Plenty of people around me have had major crises, you know. But I've never had a crisis. Now, so a version of me has never come into existence. That will be the me that's a lot less flippant than the one that you've got, by the look of it anyway. Because essence-wise, you know, I'm whoever I was when I was born. I'm talking about you, not me, you know, but just using me as an example. Lucky me got to exist, you know, through to the age of 57. You know? And unlucky me, who might have, you know, had to face crises in his life, he never got to exist. You know, I'm a shallow man now, so I've missed something by not having a crisis in my life. But you may not have missed that, and you might wish you were me. You know, but the point is, you might have more depth of character than me, to the point where you wouldn't even make a flippant YouTube channel like this. You know, why am I doing this YouTube channel? Well, a little bit of it is, you know, that I'm so careless about what I do that I might as well as not. You know, I'm not trying to see, because I haven't had a crisis, I'm not trying to work through anything. I'm fine. You know, I'm not trying to understand anything. I'm not trying to learn anything. I'm just talking. Yeah. So that's the version of me that's popped out at the other end of 50s. You know, the 50s, 57. You know, and I think very few people have had a charmed life like I have. Now, having said that, and that's sad in a way. It's a tragedy because a deeper me never got to exist. Well, not so far. We still may see him, and he may come back, and he may delete all these episodes because the penny may drop that this is all flippant, you know. But I think I shouldn't. I think I should leave them here, these episodes, as a reminder to me, you know, when I do become a little deeper and not such a shallow person, of a time, you know, the other me. Well, the other me, you know, that's a song by Paul McCartney, by the way. He's like me. Just listen to that song. The other me, yeah, not this one. It's the sort of song I'd write. Except I haven't got his musical talent, but words wise, I reckon I could match him. The words don't matter. You know, when Paul McCartney's writing a song, he's such a genius. It's not about the words. Sometimes, you know, he could be just speaking Swahili. It's not about the words. Don't listen to the words. They mean nothing. He's a shallow man like me. I don't even know him. Right, so that's that. Now you, when you die. Now, let's say you've had a major crisis in your life. Well, that's turned you into something beyond your essence, at a guess. But the you that might have been had you not gone through that crisis never got to exist, which is kind of a tragedy in a way. And yet, I've heard people say, and I've actually heard this, people who have been through a crisis. I was listening to some veteran from World War II. He said he wouldn't go back and have his time over again, because that's who made, that crisis of going to World War II and all that sort of stuff made him who he is. And if he went back and didn't have that war and didn't go to the war, it'd be too hard for him to imagine that, because he's an old man now. That would be like killing himself and creating another himself. But that'd hurt. That's just suicide. That's actually, if you went back to before you had a crisis and took steps to avoid that crisis, with the benefit of hindsight and all that sort of stuff, you would actually be sticking a knife into the self that did end up existing. That's a hard call. It's actually suicide of that you in favour of another you. Look, it depends how bad your crisis was, you might choose it. But there's a lot of you in play here, a lot of versions of you in play here. But, we're killing off all sorts of versions of you all through your life. We're killing them off every day. Every little micro decision you make, sets you down paths and paths and paths and paths. And all the other versions of you are dying all the time. And the essence of you dies too. Pretty quickly, I think, because you're altering that you. There's quite a lot of you in play here. Who goes to heaven? Out of all those versions of you, who goes to heaven? It's a tricky one. And when you get to heaven and you see your wife up there, or your husband, or whatever, or your mum, or whatever, who's that? Maybe there's a separate heaven for everyone. Can you see how this can get nuts? Now, I treated all this like a software program, really. But all the different, all the possible versions of you, the best of all possible yous. It's like the best of all possible worlds, which is an old philosophical argument. And nothing I'm saying here has been invented by me. This is all old stuff. It's been talked about for hundreds of years. I'm just having fun talking about it myself. But the point is, as you lay dying, the real you that you ended up being, who knows that person? You might know that person fairly well, but not perfectly well. And I don't know who's going to heaven, actually. And other people might know that person fairly well. What's more interesting is, I think, who wanted to know you. And, maybe you didn't give them a chance to really get to know you. But, I think there's something in the fact that there were people out there who probably did want to get to know you. I suspect there are very few of those people. You might think you've got 50 friends and all that sort of stuff, but when you lay dying, how many of those people really wanted to get to know you? Like, if you love if there's a celebrity you love and that celebrity dies, who died? Kind of, you didn't know that person personally, so who died? When David Bowie died, I had a sense of knowing him a fair bit, because I'm a David Bowie fan, even though he's done, Anyway, who died? Well, his wife said, for all the fans out there, David Bowie died. And she said, for me, David Jones died, because that was his real name. And I think, what she was saying is, there's two different people there, and I knew David Jones, you knew David Bowie. Hey, we all lost someone. That happens when you die too, I think. But I don't think a lot of people who, right now, who really wants to know you? for the sake of you, not for their own sake, but for your sake. You know, who wants to know you? You know, write them all down. Don't. You might not even need to sharpen your pencil. My God, I'm a cynic today.